Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'm sorry for being away for a while, but I've been trying to figure out what sort of topics I would like to share with you. But as a UX designer and a YouTuber, I also know that it's not really up to me to decide what to talk to, because I also need you to be interested in the topics. So that's why this episode is about asking you, what would you like me to talk about on this channel? And what do you think is helpful in your everyday life, so that I can explain that in a more proper manner. I love to share information from my own life and my own experiences and incorporate that with science. And I've sort of explored that concept my whole life. And that's due to me being extremely open in my openness trait to experience. And it started off when I was very, very young with my mother that helped me and tried to get me to understand and ask the question why things are in a certain way. And for a long time I was into astrology and thinking that as a manager I could spot certain personality traits or behaviors based on star sign or astrology. After 5 years as a manager, I can tell you that the concept of astrology on humans is, as we know in science, quite bogus. It doesn't hold any merit whatsoever. On the contrary, when it comes to personality traits, the Big Five test, for example, that do show quite significant proof in the data, and has done so for at least the last 25 or more years in the world. And the science community is quite agreed upon that it is a good way of getting guidance as to how a personality in a human being is being displayed, or what you can expect from a person based on personality rather. There is no definite proof of how a person will interact with the world based on the personality traits, but it is quite easy to spot these traits in a human being, and there's quite good evidence to support it as well. Then of course you're free in this world to deem what is useful to you, and if you believe the science or not. And I strongly advocate that people are free to believe whatever they want, as to being religious or spiritual or not, or whichever spirit you believe in. I think that's very important to point out, that we should be free as human beings, but we might not be as free as we think we are in today's society. Anyhow, I wanted to show off my beautiful little, nowadays short-haired ragdoll that started to shed fur the other day. So I usually cut her as not to shed fur. Yes, I do love animals. Please, mums, do not touch the tripod for the camera. I know you want to play around. Yeah, you do. Now skedaddle. I'm talking to them. I'm trying to do something here. Don't take my attention away, you little rascal. Yeah. Anyhow, forget about the cat. You're being annoying. So, what I'm trying to ask you is, what do you want me to talk about? Please write in the comments down below what you find interesting coming from me, and what you think that I should be talking about that will help you in your everyday life. Because I've seen now, with the science of personality traits, all my thousands of hours evaluating people in my previous profession, it's quite easy to spot the personality traits and the troubles that lie behind them. Not exactly in how what people have experienced, but the triggers and the behavior is merely explained quite explicitly by the personality trait that type of genetics has. Even in myself, it's quite easy to explain why I behave the way I do. That's quite useful when you interact with other people socially. And to be more effective in life and to understand what you shouldn't do, you can utilize this to your advantage. And that's basically what I want you to answer. Do you find the information about personality traits to be useful for you in your everyday life? And do you want to hear more about that? As to, for example, what are the main characters of a person to understand if this person gonna be evil or not? And you can actually measure that quite easily through empathy and the EQ test. You see, empathy is negatively correlated with aggression. And you might argue that, how is that so? Well, empathy is two things. It's me with my eyes and my ears seeing and hearing the emotion in the other person in front of me, identifying the emotion. The other part is me responding with the correct emotion, or rather, that's how science has described it. But they also argue that empathy is also a third part of the puzzle, which states that since all, and I'm saying normal, functioning human beings with a normal brain, because brains do have defects, as we know, have defects. For example, psychopathy, sociopathy, and other types of mental illness actually has different brain structure, and some areas in the brain don't work, and that's why they become what they are. But when it comes to empathy, you also have something called mirror neurons. And those brain cells pick up the emotions of other people that the eyes pick up. And then those mirror neurons, brain cells, will force you to feel the same feeling. So some scientists argue that being empathetic is also about controlling that trigger, that mirror neurons, in not responding in the same way as the person that you have in front of you. For example, if you see someone crying, your partner, for example, in front of you, the ability to see that the person is crying and understanding that feeling is then mimicked by your mirror neurons in your brain, so that you also start to cry. And that's seeing and responding in the same manner. But that's not always useful if you're very high in empathy, for example. If you're in a room with people that have different emotions, you will quite easily pick up on those emotions. And if you can't control that in yourself, that's going to be quite a horrible situation to be in if you're quite empathetic, if you can't control that. As you can see, empathy can be quite useful. And science also proves that empathy as a function in your brain is negatively correlated with aggression. And for example, indirect aggression. Indirect aggression is when you try to punish someone else, usually by destroying their reputation, without them knowing that it was you that inflicted this injury on them by destroying their reputation. That's indirect aggression. And since empathy is negatively correlated to indirect aggression, for example, that means that if you're low in empathy, you won't care about the emotions or the damage you inflict on others. That's why, as a strategy, indirect aggression will be quite open for you. But if you are, on the other hand, high in empathy, then you'll be able to see the pain you inflict in other people, and that will make you feel the same feeling, and thereby understanding that this is harmful to another human being, and therefore not do aggressive things. So you see how empathy can also be used as an identifier in everyday life, as to see if what a person is capable of doing to you or to others. For example, could you imagine that a certain type of person could be able to do something as horrific as using indirect aggression to get back at you or someone else? Well, you can actually see that through their levels of empathy. And you can see that either if they do the test and see which level they're at, but also you as a person can actually see and measure their level of empathy. Because if you're interacting with someone on a frequent basis, you are a perfect person to evaluate someone else. And you can easily test this yourself if you have a good ability to do that by simply, if you have a best friend, ask them to do the EQ test, which is free online, and you do it yourself, the test on them, to see how much do you go apart from each other. The truth lies somewhere in the middle. And for example, when it comes to therapy, we know that an effective therapist is only one that is able to empathize with his or her client. And that goes both ways. So if the client thinks that and perceives that the therapist is empathetic, and the therapist is empathetic, then that sort of therapeutic session will, in fact, be more successful than if both parties do not agree on the level of empathy, or rather if the therapist fails to be empathetic towards the client. So that's one good predictor of if a relationship is going to be good or not, based on the level of empathy. You can also see if you're going to want to work with other people in a group, for example. If you're a highly empathetic person and they're not, and then that might be a problem for you in that work environment. And then in an interview or when you meet them, you can see if they are suited for you as a person to interact with on a daily basis. Because you might end up in the situations which is problematic for you and which might cost you your job, since indirect aggressive people do want to slander people without the person getting slandered knowing about it. That's the strategy of indirect aggression, and it's very frequently used by people that have low empathy because they don't know the harm they're inflicting on others. That might be purposefully done, of course it is, but you should also remember that those people lack the ability, since they don't have the mirror neurons probably, to conceptualize in their head that they are actually at which level of harm they're actually inflicting on others. So this is a good way of protecting yourself in your living environment. One other good thing to see if you are predictive enough is to ask your best friend or spouse or whoever you trust to do the Big Five test, which is also free online. And then you do the test on them. You can also do the Big Five test on that person, and then you measure those two different answers or results. If you are way too far apart, then you shouldn't trust yourself in your ability to evaluate other people. But if you are spot on the majority of categories, big categories and subcategories, then you should trust your instinct in how you evaluate other people, and that can serve you in a good way when you're living your life and going about it. That's a good way of protecting yourself from other people that want to inflict harm on you, because life is hard. There is both good people and there are bad people, the people that are good choose to be good people, and bad people that are bad often choose to be bad people if they don't have some sort of mental illness, when it can be quite hard for them to learn how they are actually affecting or inflicting harm on others. So you can't solely judge people for being evil based on their actions, because some people don't have the ability mentally to understand that they are inflicting harm on others. That is the basis of this channel, to be precise. Personality traits and science behind that. And a lot of the science is quite clear, and it pops up in all reports, and it all intertwines and explains each other quite well. But that's only my opinion about the world. You might have a different way of perceiving the world, which I would say is healthy, in a very good way, because we shouldn't think alike. It's good that we all have different views, and we are born with different genetics and different personalities, and then we go through life in different ways, which makes us incapable, I would say, to have the same views in life. And it's always good to start listening to the person that you're talking to and trying to understand that person before you even start thinking about how to respond. Because if we can't understand each other, then that's got to be a huge problem. And yes, personality plays a huge role in if you're able to understand other people, but you can also train yourself to do that. Anyhow, write in the comments what you want to hear me talk about in the future, and what you like and what you dislike. Help me help you in a good manner, because I would hate to see my knowledge not being used by many people, because I have helped so many people before, and I know I can provide good information for you. So please let me help you in either way. Tell me in the comments below what you want to hear more about and what you need help with, and I'll try to do my best in explaining that and telling you how you might go about attacking the problems that you have in your life and how to conceptualize that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, everyone.